This was the densest city on the planet, and this is Welcome to Kowloon, a recently released indie horror game. With 7 out of 10 on Steam and developed by only 4 people, what is it about this game that has so many calling it one of the scariest out right now? Could it be that the game accurately portrays some of the horrors witnessed in the darkest alleys of the real Kowloon Walled City? Well, as we'll come to see, the people of Kowloon may have for the most part lived in relative peace with one another, but tucked away in its alleyways, every vice imaginable was promised. Given the alarming rates of criminal activities, common law clearly did not apply here, soon earning for itself the nickname City of Darkness. As Welcome to Kowloon puts it in the game's premise, an indie horror game from the first person in which you find yourself in an area called Kowloon in search of cheap housing. The inhabitants of this place only at a first glance seem to be ordinary people, but if we dig deeper, we will see their real faces. Under the misty skies of China lay Kowloon, the most densely populated city, a tangle of narrow streets and endless passageways. Here, time lost its meaning, and the buildings merged into one indistinguishable sea of iron, concrete, and glass. Every step in this city led to a new discovery, a new story hidden within its walls. Released on Steam on August 1st, 2023, the game itself is of course a video game, so there probably weren't monsters in the city, but at the end credits, a tape is played with the following message. In other words, in the last days of the real Kowloon, the people, fearing any day could be their last, ensuing chaos broke out. As a note reads from the game, I've been hiding out here from all the horror that was starting to happen in my family and the whole town. It's a good thing there's not a living soul in Kowloon anymore. The day of reckoning did indeed come on the 14th of January 1987. In the morning hours, just as residents were going about their daily routines, news of demolition and redevelopment of the city broke. At the same time, some 400 officials from the Hong Kong Housing Department arrived on site, and they knocked on the doors of each and every household to survey the residents. For those who refused to budge, the Hong Kong government resorted to sending riot police to evict them in July 1992. Thereafter, a tall wire fence was erected to surround the eerily unpopulated site, one that had finally seen the end of an era. Maneuvering your way through the tightly crammed corridors to find housing, you'll encounter scary lady monsters, this guy, a knife guy. The scenery is perhaps where we'll find the most impressive similarities. Indeed, countless reviews point to the overall graphics, atmosphere, and ambience to be the game's particular strong suit, lacking in the fact it is essentially a walking simulator. In the final days of the Kowloon Walled City, the Hong Kong government met with no resistance from the Chinese government about their plans to demolish the city, carefully placed the city under close surveillance so as not to draw the attention of any residents. The official plans to compensate and evict were kept secret should any opportunists move to the city to receive payment. As negotiations continued, the Hong Kong government worked out a $2.76 billion compensation package for those affected. For each individual flat, residents received approximately $380,000, and with that, some 33,000 satisfied residents moved out by November 1991. About 9 months later, an 8-story tower block was symbolically smashed by a wrecker's ball, inviting spirited cheers from the guests and screams of protest by begrudging former residents. James Crawford writes his personal account from visiting the city. There was no law to speak of. This was an anarchist society, self-regulating and self-determining. It was a colony within a colony, a city within a city, a tiny block of territory at once contested and neglected. As you move deeper into the city, long corridors offered glimpses into smoke-filled rooms. Everywhere there were bodies lying in gloom. At Kwong Ming Street, known as the Electric Station, wooden stalls sold cheap drugs. Addicts crouched down to inhale smoke through tubes held over heated tinfoil. Bare rooms, enticingly referred to as divans, were filled with prone men and women, all sunk in opium stupors. Many of the city's rats were addicts too, and could be seen withering in torment in dark corners, desperate for a hit. By April 1994, the Kowloon Walled City no longer existed in its physical form. All that was left were dust, rubble, and a cultural legacy that cannot be demolished. That legacy would indeed live on, for it's not just Welcome to Kowloon that features the city. Call of Duty Black Ops 1 in the campaign mission Numbers sees the SOG team fighting enemy soldiers in the Kowloon Walled City and collecting info from a scientist. The mission setting in Kowloon was also featured in the First Strike map pack.
I got you! What about the Numbers Club? Oh yes! Not that. What is it in you? You have the key!
BO1 isn't the only game to draw from the city. The cyberpunk world of the 2022 indie dystopia game Stray is based on the city. In the game, Kowloon is the beautifully rendered walled city that is inhabited by humanoid robots. The rich and intricate explorable space has been immensely praised by both reviewers and critics for its visual aesthetic, ambience, and design. The legacy of the Kowloon Walled City continues to live and thrive in other areas too. Not only has its grungy, anarchist vibe inspired bars, exhibitions, and manga, but traces of the dystopian city can also be found in numerous films. If you've seen Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins, you would see striking parallels between the Narrows, a walled-in slum in Gotham, and the Kowloon Walled City, which inspired the director and his production designer. In Japan, the Kawasaki Warehouse, a 5-story arcade building, took recreation to the next level. Featuring a life-size diorama of the Kowloon Walled City, the arcade took visitors back in time into another world with its fluorescent signs and claustrophobic alleyways. Readers of sci-fi should note that the renowned American science fiction writer William Gibson described Kowloon not long before its demolition as a hive of dream. What Gibson saw in the unregulated organic chaos of the City of Darkness was an embodiment of his famous concept of cyberspace, or as we call it today, the internet.